and welcome back to another TP's Diary video. This is day 6 on the manual gearbox conversion of my Jaguar XJC V12. This video we're going to continue on with the mock-up of all of those components, and we're going to start by looking at the strengthening of that rear gearbox mount. So I suppose the best things for it, let's get under the car and we'll get started. I'm quite pleased with how this is actually all worked out. It really looks good, and there's plenty of sort of a clearance around it, so you know I don't think there's going to be any issues with that at all. So as I've said a million times, we're now going to just look at trying to reinforce it. So I want to put something straight up here. Obviously I've got to avoid these brackets, so I'm just going to trace around here everything roughly that needs to be avoided. I'm happy I've marked all of that. So I think I'm going to try and get something in here and across like that. I'm not going to show you that taking that mount apart again. So so I think while I'm under here now, I want to stick a laser down just to check that that is all in line. So I just need to mark at the front end of the engine or the axle. I think if I just put a marker maybe on the front subframe. That's the center. Okay, so I've got the laser on it, and okay, I mean that's approximately in the center. Okay, which looks about right. Goes straight through. If you look through the middle of the drive spline on the end of the gearbox, through the middle of the mount, through the middle of the transmission tunnel, and look how it meets the diff. It's about, what, an inch? The diff is an inch, but if you look at the bottom of the diff in the middle of the IRS cradle, it's going bang through the middle of that, and then obviously out through the back of the car. So I would say that is absolutely, I think the mount, I mean, that's what I was expecting. I expected the mount to be correct. So anyway, I don't think I'm going to look into that anymore. I reckon that diff position and the pinion position is exactly where it should be. So maybe you guys can comment and let me know. So right, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to get this mount out and we'll get into the workshop. Okay, so right, let's get on with this strengthening this bracket. This is the part that I cut off, and if you see, it's actually very thick there. That went in like that. So not only have we got this swage in here, we also had a return that obviously picked up on the two bolts for the lower gearbox mount. Let's call it like that. So what I'm sort of thinking is, if I take just a piece of this angle, I know it's a bit crude, but I could take that from this bracket, pick up the hole. This is actually the same thickness as that, so it'll be even thicker when I've welded it to this. Bring it across and then just over to this mark here, and then if I just tack that in, make sure it fits in the transmission tunnel, and then on the other side I will then weld in a cross piece across to pick up on the two angles on the other side. I think that will be it. I think that will be strong enough. And I don't think there'll be any issues. That will obviously then bolt back. It'll all be welded in. Bearing in mind this was spot welded before, I'm going to continuously weld it, so it should actually be almost stronger than new. But it obviously can't have been that accurate. I mean, look at look at how that piece has been spot welded on. I mean, you know, talk about being on the piss. So yeah, I'm actually gonna just leave these as holes, because now I've cut this out, I can actually get to the other side of it, and so I can put a nylock on it, so I can put a bolt through. So that helps me out, you know, considerably. So I'm going to cut this bit off because I've lost it on that side. I'm going to cut this one off. Okay, so I've now got the mount and I've welded the strength back in. I mean, you can feel it now. There's no movement in it. It looks a bit weird. So just bear with me while I explain, because this part here on the back, which was already on there, has been actually spot welded skew width. So I've sort of left that alone, and I've made my supports to suit, really. So so just bear with me. It looks a bit odd, but it is actually straight. So essentially I've just taken these angles, I've extended them out here. As you can see, I've welded bits on in order to so it can pick up those holes. They're pretty much level with the brackets that go up into the transmission tunnel, which is good. So when they're bolted in and they're bolted in, it's sort of triangulated. I am going to weld a gusset in here, but I want to get it on the car first. These are both approximately 35 millimeters in, and this is 20 by 20 millimeter. 25 by 25 millimeter, just standard angle line. It's just what I had sitting in the parts bin. I then also welded this piece on. I know it will sit, you know, I know there will be a bit of water that will sit in there, but to be honest, I'm going to get powder coating in here, so I'm not too worried about that. And also when it's on the car, it's going to be, I think it'll be fine. So I'm going to just go and quickly just make sure that it just fits up inside the car. And if it does, then I'm going to carry on pressing on, and then I'll weld the whole thing up. I'm going to go and get in the car. You guys have seen enough of this bracket going in and out, so I won't film that. But yeah, I'll just make sure it all fits, and then we can keep going. Okay, so I know that's a bit of an overkill. However, I'm not going to bother putting a gusset in there, in these bits here. I can't see that actually, now it's in. I can't see the point. I think that's pretty strong now. I mean, it certainly feels strong. So, right, I'm going to wait for that to cool down, and then we'll re-bolt that back in the car. And then there's a few other bits and pieces that we need to do for the mock-up. So yeah, let's wait for this to cool down, and probably need to clean it up a little bit. And we'll get it back in the car. Okay, so I've got the mount back in, which is great. It's all now welded up. The only thing I did also do is I actually welded in the bolts the other way up. There was a little bit of a clearance issue. Let me just show you. If you can just see just there. So I needed to weld the bolt in order to make sure that I didn't have a nut on that side. So that's all worked out quite well. And I'm really happy with how it all fits. However, I think I've just seen a problem. I've merrily left this part, the bracket on, the end of it on, and with the old gearbox, it had a flange with a universal joint on it, and there was a bit of clearance, which obviously went either side of this bracket here. Now, I think I've got the drive shaft here. I think if I put the drive shaft in, it's going to foul on this bracket, which is boring, which means I have to take it off again. So I'm just going to put the drive shaft in now, and which means I've got to take that out. Put the drive shaft in now to see whether or not I'm going to have any clearance issues. So yeah, let's do that. Okay, that's right. Hold on, let me just show you. So you can see it's fouling here. That's typical, isn't it? So I'm going to have to take it out again. Okay, so yeah, I've got to cut this bit out. So I've got to get the gearbox mount out for the third time now. Right, getting a bit of a dab hand at this now, getting that on and off. Okay, so I'm quite happy. I've cut this away now. So that should give me enough clearance for the drive shaft. So let's get the drive shaft in, and hopefully that will fit. Right, yeah, loads of space now. Okay. Okay, so that is actually the drive shaft in, and look, there's plenty of clearance now. So that bracket finally is complete. As in case you're wondering, this is a single drive shaft, and without the center bearing in it. I think what I'm going to do while I'm under here now, I might just jack up the back end and just check the rear diff ratio. I think we'd worked out when we, well, between Ben at Simply Performance and I, when we chose the gear ratios for this box, we assumed that it was a standard rear end. So, which should be, I think it's 3.07, I think is the ratio. So I want to check that I'm getting 3 revolutions of the prop shaft for every 1 revolution of the wheel, and then we should be about right. So let's get that rear end jacked up now, and check that. Right, so I'm just going to put a bit of tape on here, and then if I spin the wheel, I've got a bit of tape on the wheel already. So if I spin the wheel, that's 1. That's 2. And that's 3. So the rear end ratio as we had it is actually correct. It's 3.07. So that's good. So now that's good to know. So it's also good to know if once the car's back on the road, because I'm going to have to get the speedo calibrated to the new gearbox and the new gears and everything else. So and it wasn't working properly in the first place. So I need to do that. So right, let's drop that down. The next job is to start mocking up that exhaust pipe. I've actually taken the exhaust manifolds off at the moment because this bracket here is in the way. Right, I've got the manifolds back on now. I've had to remove the heat shields. So I need to actually make some modifications. This one it will actually fit on. However, the mounting bracket, this one here, you can see it's got the offset, and actually that, which is the part of the bracket where that mounts on, needs to be straight. And then if I put all of that back on, the standard heat shield will fit. I want to make sure that I've got all these heat shields on, because this is obviously the steering rack boot here, and I want to be able to protect it. The one on the other side has got this part of the heat shield, and that protects the edge of the steering rack where the steering column bolts to it. That doesn't fit. So I'm going to do one at a time. But I think if I cut this vertical part off so it matches the one on the other side, that will then fit on, and then I need to figure out how to protect the top half. I mean, these parts that I'm fitting, none of them are standard. I mean, this is a sports exhaust. This car was never, even though the V12 engine was designed originally as a race car engine, but it was put into this car as a cruiser. So I'm putting a sports exhaust system on it, and it's inevitable that I have to do a bit of modifying. So anyway, you will also notice that I haven't just put the manifolds on. I've actually put the full exhaust on with the X pipe in the middle of the system. So I've pretty much got there now. I just need to sort out these heat shields, and then the last job, before we can take it all apart and actually start doing some really fun stuff like indexing the bell housing to the engine, which is very important. I've just got to sort out the plumbing, roughly, where I want to be for the clutch slave cylinder, because I've got to obviously plumb it in, and so that's the next job. But first things first, let's have a look at these heat shields and modify these brackets and things, and try and get it sorted out. So let's go from there. This is the heat shield that went on this side, and it was sitting quite a long way back, like over here. Now I'm thinking that I'll bring it to about there, which means that I need to be, this is the bracket that fits it in, so which picks up on the lower part of the steering rack, and then there's and the top half there, which is the same on the other side. So I think that this bracket, I think that needs to be, I mean, I could have it in line, but actually I think it would be better about there. So that's typical. I haven't got my tape measure here, but it looks to me like that's 10 millimeters. So I need to bring this across, so that face there is 10 millimeters from that face there, and then weld it on. Just cut that straight off there and then re-weld it on. This is pretty straightforward, this modification. Essentially what I've got to do is I've just got to cut this bit off straight and then move it over and weld it on here. So what I need to do is mark 15 millimeters approximately to there. It's about 15 millimeters. I have actually already shot blasted this part. It just makes life very much nicer to sort of work with clean parts. So that's where we're going to bring it over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut it straight down there. Okay, so I've actually done that wrong. I've done that wrong. I've cut it the wrong way. I should have cut it that way. Oh well. Don't worry, I can sort that out. So let's just go here. Oh, idiot, Tom. I bet you're all at home thinking, he's doing that wrong, isn't he? Okay, so I want to now, I've got that tacked on. So I've moved it across now. So it's 15 millimeters from that edge. I think the best thing to do is I just want to get it on the car and just check it's all going to fit correctly. I'm going to leave this bit on the back because that just adds a bit of strength to the whole bracket. And then, although it's not attached there, so I'll have to put a tack in there as well. And then I'll just tidy it all up and just sort of angle it a bit, make it look a bit neater. So, so yeah, let's get it on the car and make sure it all fits. So that's where it bolts onto, and then it comes down and just slots into this bolt here, which holds all the steering rack on. So let's get it in now. Okay, that's perfect. So let's get back into the workshop, finish off welding up this bracket, and then we can bolt it back on. You got to remember, all these brackets are going to come off again because the whole lot are going to be powder coated. Otherwise they'll rust and everything will just fall apart. Hopefully not. So anyway, let's get back into the workshop and finish it off. Okay, that's it all nicely welded together. I think we'll call that bracket done. So let's get it bolted on the car, and yeah, and we'll move on to the driver's side. Okay, so right, let's get this bracket on. Hopefully everything's going to fit. So okay, so now I've got the bracket bolted to the heat shield. Let's get Okay, so that was quite tricky, but I've managed to get it bolted in, and now I think that looks great. So let's turn it around. So now look, that just sits in there like perfectly. So right, So what we need to do now is do the same thing on the driver's side. I've already checked that now gone from lock to lock. That the steering column doesn't actually foul on the exhaust, so that's good news. So this is the driver's side. This is the heat shield for this side. It has this upper part, which I probably explained before. I think the bracket on this side, which is the same bracket as I had to modify on the passenger side, I think this side's actually okay, believe it or not. However, the top of this hits. So I'm thinking I'm just going to modify, cut the top of that, and then that should fit. The other issue I've got here is the handbrake mechanism is hitting the exhaust, and I've had a quick look in the manual, and the position of the handbrake doesn't look right. So so I need to understand, because actually the position of it should be sort of somewhere like that, which means this, what I think they call it, the primary cable is too long. So yeah, so I need to look into trying to adjust that properly, because if it was adjusted correctly, because basically the end of the lever, I'll show you in the book, it looks like it should be level with the chassis rail, whereas at this one, where it's positioned at the minute, it's like an inch or two below the chassis rail. So something's not quite right there. So I just need to investigate that a bit more. And that might be easier to do without all the gearbox and everything in. And the other thing is that I know I've said I'm going to start looking at trying to plumb in this slave cylinder. I think I'm going to take the gearbox out to do that. When I'm indexing the bell housing, I think I'm going to do that then. So, right, I think the first thing I need to do is just get into the workshop, just cut the top of this heat shield off and see whether or not that makes a difference. So, so this is the mount. The mount. I'm so used to saying the mount. So this is the heat shield, and I think I need to. If you look, it's got a sort of it's kinked over a bit, and with the other exhaust, it sort of came down sort of below this area here, well this plate here, whereas the new one is slightly above. So I think I need to straighten it out so it's straight, and then I also think I need to just sort of cut that sort of mark there. So that's sort of got it. I have to be careful nowadays with my hearing. I managed to, after nearly 40 years in a factory, I've managed to lose 30% of my hearing, which is a bit boring, so I have to be a bit careful. So, right, ear defenders. Right, so that's pretty good. It's nice and straight. So I think now let's mark up what we're going to do. So nothing about this plate is straight. So if we go from this radius here, roughly 80 millimeters. We go, hang on, I'll tell you what, the top of that nut, 85 millimeters. Okay, and then straight. So we go to the top of each of those radiuses, like that. Right, so I think what we need to do is just cut that out. So that's nice and straight. I've reprofiled the top of it. So I would suggest that we get in under the car now and just see whether or not that fits. If it doesn't fit, then we'll come back and we'll just modify it a bit more. Let's have a look and see whether or not this fits now. Perfect. Okay, so this is what I'm looking at. So you can see just here, you can see the mounting bracket. And now when I've put the it now fits up in there. Yeah. Like that. So we're avoiding the steering column, as you can see. We've now got a heat shield that's protecting the steering rack and not going to go overheat all the hydraulics and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm pretty happy with that. And as I said before, I now need to think about plumbing in that slave cylinder for the clutch. I think it's going to be an awful lot easier to do it when I'm indexing the bell housing. So that means that I now need to take everything off again. So all the exhaust pipe off. I've got to get the gearbox out, get the manifolds off, etc. Then things like this bracket or this heat shield can be bolted on permanently. This one on this side, I need to obviously powder coat the bracket itself. So there you go. That's all of the little brackets, all the modifications, I believe, at this stage done. And it does take an awful long time to get all of these things right and make sure the clearances are correct and all of this sort of stuff. And and that's sort of part and parcel with sort of when you're dealing with old cars. Not every one of these are the same. So you buy a part that's sort of made today, which is exactly the same as the the part that you bought before, let's say. But the car's different, so you have to modify it and modify things. So I'm hoping that's all the modifications now done. Obviously, I've got to sort out that handbrake lever, understand why that's not quite sitting in the right spot. But yeah, so now I've got to get on and get all of those components off. The next video is going to be quite interesting. I'm going to plumb in that clutch slave cylinder. I think it's going to be so much easier to do when the gearbox is out of the car. And also a very, very important job. I've got to index the bell housing to the engine, make sure that that is all completely in line. So there you are. So I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please do hit that like button. And thank you all so much for watching. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the next video.